All right, thank you. It's good to see everyone made it back after lunch. We thought we may be losing a few of you, but I'm glad to see all of you have made it back for our afternoon session. We hope you'll continue to stick around towards the end too if you still need some help registering, listing, or if you have any other questions. We will be around. I know many of you came to us during the break. We'll be doing the same thing afterwards, so please do stick around with us. We look forward to meeting with you. All right, so I will be doing the covering annual certification of our drug product listings. And as you can see there, my name is Regie Samuel, and let's get started. So just quickly go over what we'll be covering today. We'll be going over some background. I'll be running through that pretty quickly because I think Paul had covered that in the very morning session. And then we'll go into who must certify, what needs to be certified, and when do you need to do it. Then we'll go into what will happen if a product is not certified. And finally, some of the common validation errors we see with certification. Unlike some of my colleagues, I will be starting off with our challenge question to see how much you know before we get started. Let's ask our first question. Oh, let me go back one slide. There we go. Okay. I'll start here with the background then. Did I miss a slide? Oh, you moved it to it. Oh, okay. All right, well, so then we're going into the background. Just very quickly, I'm going to run through it here. This is basically the two portions of the law that establish the statutory requirement to keep listings up to date. The first one there, 510J, basically saying that the registrants need to delist any discontinued product on file every June or December. And then the Part D of that section, that registrants need to send in any material changes to any listing already on file every June or December. Now, why was that important? Because as we found, there were firms that were listing drug products many, many years ago, and they would never go back to look at that product. And we would often find drugs that have establishments that were deregistered or no longer registered years prior to that. And obviously, as you can see, that's a concern for us as FDA because as Paul had mentioned, part of that vision is that we have accurate and complete data and to help those in the patient population and healthcare administrators. So we want to make sure we keep that information up to date. Sometimes establishments went out of business, but products were still listing them as the establishment that was manufacturing their product. We want to make sure we have folks look at their drug listings to make sure everything is right and up to date. And so in 2016, we implemented this in November, basically for each listed drug to certify that no changes have occurred, and if no changes have occurred since the last review and update of that product listing. And we created this new SPL document type for you that we were able to use in case you had many, many products and you were thinking, oh no, I have to go into every single listing now and check them. So we created the SPL we're going to talk about today, which is called the Blanket No Changes Certification of Product Listing. Long name, but it's a very useful SPL because you can go and use that SPL to be able to pull up the products you've previously had listed and being able to, with one or two clicks, being able to certify that everything is still the same as it was in the previous update. And so now there is this annual requirement for you to check your listings or to certify that no changes have occurred, similar to your registration requirements. You have to do this yearly, and the certification can be done between October 1st and December 31st, just like you do with your establishment registration requirements. So who must certify and when? A new certification SPL must be created every year. And unlike your product listings or your establishment registrations or your labeler code, this doesn't need to be tracked in terms of updates. It's just that you're going to be creating a new one. So your set ID will change. You don't have to worry, oh no, I can't find my set ID. I need to email eDuralis and find out what my set ID was. Don't worry about the set ID. Every year you can create a new file with a new set ID. You don't need to remember any of the header details. Secondly, we want to mention this also because we know there's a lot of folks, we've seen people come in with questions that you've submitted to us regarding private label distributors and contract manufacturers. Keep in mind that the ultimate responsibility for submitting product listing lies with the registered establishment, and certification of product listings is also the responsibility of the registered establishments. PLDs and contract manufacturers, that's private label distributors and contract manufacturers, should work together to ensure that all NDCs involved in their business relationships are certified properly. That goes along with US agents, importers, consultants, and anyone acting as an authorized agent for a registrant. You may submit product listing certification SPL files on their behalf of whoever it is that you're representing. But make sure you guys talk to each other and make sure that you know that it's been done. Sometimes we can say, oh, I think the manufacturer is going to do it, and then the PLD is the one, the private label distributor is the one marketing the drug, and they no longer see they now see that their drug on the NDC directory is no longer there because it's uncertified. Well, then you guys need to have that conversation and make sure that takes place and that you do this every year. Please keep in mind, and we get this question all the time, that certification SPL submissions will only be accepted during the registration renewal period of October through December. What does that mean? That means that SPL, that blanket no changes certification SPL of product listing, will only be accessible and accepted by our system between October 1st and October 31st. So if you come in on excuse me, September 15th and you want to submit this blanket no changes certification SPL, you will not be able to. It's only during that re-registration, now we're calling certification, window. Now, what must be certified? At the time of re-registration in the fall, every active listing on file with the FDA that has not been updated within the current calendar year must be certified that no changes have occurred in order to remain active for the coming year. So I'm going to, again, this is the CDER SBIA, so we're going to be talking about CDER regulated drugs. I know we've had some questions about CVM drugs. This is about CDER regulated drugs. All finished and unfinished drugs need to be certified. That includes those bulks, those APIs, approved, unapproved, prescription, OTC, medical gases, homeopathics, repackager, relabeler, bulk drugs for compounding. All those need to be certified. They need to be checked every year. All right, every year, guys. We want to make sure this is done because it's very, very important to have correct listing information. The only listings that can be certified are those that were submitted electronically. So if you've never submitted in a product listing SPL electronically and yours was in the paper submission times, I hope that is not the case for you. You must submit your SPLs electronically and then only you'll be able to actually certify them. You can't certify a listing that was submitted in paper through a blanket no changes certification. You need to submit a brand new listing. And then what you're certifying is that all the product data that is contained in that product listing is reviewed to be deemed accurate and up to date. Deemed accurate and up to date. So if you're hoping that you can you just want to see 12/31/2020 show up on the expiration date of the NDC directory, and that's all your goal is, that's not the point of certification or making sure that you update your listings. It's to make sure that it's actually accurate. So please keep that in mind. I know we all want to see that new, you don't want to see that expired. You want to see that 2020, 2021 date of your expiration. But really, please keep in mind how important it is and what you're helping us do to keep this information reliable. What happens to an uncertified product? An NDC product code which has not been updated during the calendar year or certified during the October to December registration renewal period will be considered expired on January 1st of the following year. I'll just put these up there so you can look at them as I go through them. All the expired listings will be removed or notated in the NDC directory unfinished drug download files. Now, if there is a product and you submitted, we get this question a lot, so this is part of my errors section as we covered. What we have happen is folks send in a new listing. Let's say you sent it in February 2019 of this year. You just listed your drug, everything was approved, and you put your drug on the market. Your product NDC is now certified through 12/31/2020 of the following year. If you had listed a drug in the previous year, let's say November 2018, you listed your drug, and then in June 2019, you updated that listing because the establishment information had changed. You changed manufacturers and you want to update the information. Hey, guess what? You don't need to certify it during the October 1st to December 31st, 2019 period, because since you updated the drug in 2019, that drug is now certified through 12/31/2020. Am I making sense? So what you need to do is, let's say you listed a drug in 2018, that November 2018, you haven't touched, nothing has changed, everything is the same, and you're here today on October 22nd, 2019, and you want to say, hey, Reg, nothing has changed, everything is the same. You can submit, in that case, a blanket no changes certification SPL, and then that product NDC is now certified through 12/31/2020. Or, if you wanted to, you could open up your SPL file for that product listing, click on Create New Version in CDER Direct, just look it over real quick and click Submit, and you've done the same thing. You've certified, you've said, hey, I've looked at it, and now that drug product is certified through 12/31/2020. You do not then need to go and submit a certification SPL just to certify it. That's the thing I want to make clear, make sure everyone understands, because we know we get that question a lot. I submitted a listing in June, I updated it, but I haven't certified it. Because you think you didn't certify it because you didn't submit a blanket no changes certification SPL. You did. Good job. Give yourself a pat on the back because you did check it in this calendar year. So now it's current all the way through the next calendar year. Can I get any shaking of heads? Everyone got that? Okay. The other question that we always get in terms of what are you certifying is that you're not certifying the establishment. We get this question a lot come through our inbox that saying, hey, I submitted a blanket no changes certification of product listing. How come my registered establishment is still not showing up as current through 12/31/2020 on the Decker's site, on the Drug Establishment Current Registration site? Well, that's because the blanket no changes certification is different from the no change notification for establishment registration. Please make sure you keep those two separate. Those are two different things. As the SPL document we've tried to make clear, it's a no changes certification, no blanket no changes certification of product listing, not of establishment registration. Are we good there? All right, so keep those two separate. If you did the establishment registration, that's not the same as certifying the drug product listings. If you certify drug product listings, that's not the same as re-registering your establishment. Make sure you guys keep those two separate. All right, so what does it look like over here? As you can see on the screen there, if you're in CDER Direct and you're going to create a blanket no changes certification of, what is it? Product listing. Yeah, you got it. Good, good. Of product listing, when you're there, you go ahead and create that, and this is what it's going to end up looking like. You're going to get this information that's going to show up, and now you're going to be able to, let's see. Okay. I'm going to use my mouse if I can here, so it's a little more clear, so you guys can see. All right. So you don't have to guess where my eyes are looking. So once you're in here, and if this was my account and my organization done, which is pulled based on your CDER Direct account, what you've created your account for through CDER Direct account, through CDER Direct, it'll automatically pull it in here if you want to say it's the same. And what I can do now is add a labeler code. I can add a labeler code. Let's say I'm just going to make one up. 00000. All right. I enter that labeler code in, and it's going to show up in the labeler code section here. And then I can click on Refresh Establishments. Once I click Refresh Establishments, all the establishments associated with that particular labeler code will appear. Now we've had questions come in because folks haven't been able to, once they put in the labeler code, no establishments showed up. And what ended up happening is their labeler code would actually, that line would appear as grayed out. And then they'd wonder, oh, how come I can't certify, why are no establishments showing up for this labeler code? Remember, when you submit your product listing SPLs, when you put in the establishment section, there is a flag for confidential in the establishment section of the product listing SPL. If that product listing SPL was submitted with that confidential flag checked, it's not that establishment, they're not going to just show up here. Except except if that organization DUNS that I have in my CDER Direct account is also the same DUNS as the establishment that was marked confidential, then it'll show up. But otherwise, it won't. Okay? And if that's the case, then you'll need to click on this Add Establishment button. If that's one of the problems you've been having, click on Add Establishment and enter the DUNS in manually. Enter the DUNS in manually. Once you've done that, use my clicker here, you may get some errors. One of them is this that we get quite often, which I please remember. This is basically saying, hey, you must have forgotten what day today is because you've submitted one and it's not between October 1st and December 31st. So that is all that error is, and we see it a lot. We understand people want to submit these because they love doing SPL in their spare time, but keep it to October 1st to December 31st. I know it's hard, but just keep it to that time period, and you won't see that error come up. All right. Now, I always tell folks that I help on the phone or through email is that if you just have one or two products, maybe 3 or 4, maybe you don't want to learn a whole new SPL, how to do this SPL. What you can do is just go back to the SPL you have created, the product listing SPL for your particular NDC. Just click on Create New Version when you've opened it up, look it over, and click Submit. And now you've certified. You don't need to do this whole other thing. This seems to be most useful for folks that have a lot of products, and you're not going to be able to go through every SPL and do this process. So for those of you that might be a smaller business, maybe you only have a few products, I would suggest to you, go ahead and just keep every year, look at your SPL, click on Create New Version in your product listing SPL, look it over, make sure your establishment information is correct, and then click Submit. And let that product listing SPL go through, and that's the same as, quote unquote, certifying that the product. So I thought I'd include this flag just to make it clear. When you have many products for a firm, this is the best way to go because it'll pull up all of your product information, which I'm going to get to. Next, the product statuses. Excuse me. This is really the key to avoiding any errors you may be getting in submitting a certification SPL, is to understand what the product statuses are that appear when you clicked Show Products after you've added your establishments. You would see a screen like this, and your status of that product would then appear right here, right here. And we've put up here, tried to make it clear, as CDER Direct, we want to be as user-friendly as possible. Want to make sure you understand what each of those statuses mean. So let's just quickly go over what it means, because we have a lot of folks that come in and say, hey, I want to certify. You're so anxious to certify, and we're not letting you certify. And you're really upset about that you're awake at night. So if you understand the product statuses, we can get rid of that frustration that you're feeling that's causing problems in relationships. We want to be able to let you know, if it says certified, just let it be. It's already certified. It's good. The status says certified, let it go. That means that particular product NDC is certified until the next calendar year. So you can't click on it. Stop trying to click on it. It's certified. The next one is the one you want to try to check, the one that says uncertified. Again, all of these statuses are not something that'll just be on the slide. It's on CDER Direct when you go to the Show Products page. We thought of everything. You're not going to remember all this probably, but it's there on CDER Direct. So when it says uncertified, that means, guess what it means? It's uncertified. So smart. Very good. It means uncertified. So now you can certify this one by clicking on the checkbox, and you'll be good to go. It'll be certified next year, so don't try clicking on it next year. The other one we have, it might say pending compliance case. Ooh. Okay. This means there's an open listing compliance case on this product, so you cannot just certify it. You were hoping to get past that compliance case by just certifying it. Not going to happen. You're going to have to address the actual product listing SPL on which that compliance case has been opened, whatever NDC that is. And when you see the NDC, you're like, I don't know what's wrong with this one. It's time to come and contact us and see if you're not sure what's wrong. If you Maybe you didn't give us the right contact information and we sent you a listing deficiency letter, but we actually sent this to someone that's moved to Hawaii that no longer works here. Then you have to have that conversation with us so we can tell you what's the issue with that particular SPL. The next one says completed, which basically means the product is discontinued. So don't try certifying it. It's not available for certification. It'll be grayed out. You won't be able to click on it to certify it. Current means you've been a good employee. You've been doing all your work, and you've got everything current right now. You've been updating your listings, and you don't need to certify this listing because in this case, it was probably one where you updated it or listed it brand new in the current calendar year. You listed it sometime between January 1st and September 30th, or between the January 1st and sometime between the time you looked at CDER Direct to look this up. So everything is fine. It's current. You're good to go. Don't try to certify it. You won't be able to. Don't be discouraged. You might be laughing, but people get discouraged that they cannot click certify. So that's why I'm making it clear. It's okay. You're good to go. The last one is one we're going to finish up on is the validation errors. Some of you have emailed us and let us know, Reggie, I've submitted this before. It was 2 years ago. Everything was fine. Why is there validation errors on this? As validation procedures become updated, we are then going to put your SPL, product list SPL, it goes through that validation that's current. So what may have been working for you 3 years ago doesn't work anymore. So that's what that validation error does. So what do you have to do? You have to actually go into your SPL and your product listing SPL and correct those errors. All right, now I'm going to finish off with that. I'm going to quickly go over the last two, what are these called? Product statuses. Inactivated means we're going to cover what inactivation is. Leyla's going to cover that. That the listing data for this product has been inactivated by FDA and cannot be certified. Contact us for more information if you've got a question. And Leyla will go over why things get inactivated. Lastly, expired means the listing data is expired because it was not certified. So to change that status, you can't certify it now. You need to submit an update to the previous product listing in order for you to be able to certify this listing. All right. So the validation errors, very quickly on some of them. Excuse me. What will happen is you'll see that validation error icon. I'm going to point to it right here. That was one of the statuses. You'll click on it, and then something like this will pop up. One of the ones we see most often is that your particular establishment is associated. Your particular establishment is associated with your particular SPL is associated with an establishment that is no longer current. This is one of the main ones we find. So you want to make sure you go back into your product listing SPL and put it in an establishment that's current, or tell your manufacturer or whoever your pack label establishment to submit a re-registration, because that's the only way you'll be able to certify the listing. Another one we see is that you are trying to certify something, but it's not something you can certify because of one of those statuses. You have to submit a full product listing SPL. And then these last two, this one is basically what I told you before about the establishment. This is like the top one that we find. The establishment that's associated with that product listing SPL is not current. And this one, please excuse the typo. It says on or after October 1st. It should say on or after January 1st of the previous year. This is basically saying you submitted an SPL in the previous year, in 2018 of June, and it's only now you need to recertify or submit a new product listing. And if I've missed anything. All right, now we get to my challenge questions. The number one question, can I submit a blanket no changes certification SPL prior to October 1 during a calendar year? No. As much as you'd like to, you cannot. No, correct. All right. And then the next one, if I listed or updated a product in the current calendar year, do I need to ensure that I certify that product between October 1 to December 31? No. Very good. You did very well. Sum it up. Every active listing on file with the FDA that has not been updated within the current calendar year must be certified that no changes have occurred in order to remain active. Submit those SPLs for certification between October to December 31st. Products that are not certified will be considered expired and removed from publication of the NDC directory on January 1st of the following year. Products that are expired, delisted, or have a listing deficiency or validation errors cannot be certified. You need to submit a full product listing SPL. Finally, this is one of the exceptions, is that products under the category of unapproved drug for use in drug shortage cannot be certified. All right. And thank you for keeping your listings up to date, folks. We really appreciate it. It really helps us out, and you're helping out more than you can know. Next, we'll have Leyla talking to us about inactivations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, folks. I feel like I hit the jackpot. I get to go after Regie, and I get to present on inactivation. My name is Leyla. I'm with EDRLS. I've been with EDRLS since the beginning of my career in SBIA in 2008, through the ups and downs and the new exciting stuff that we come up with every day. So thanks for coming. Well, guess what? Just remember to send your slides last minute, folks, because then Jeff doesn't get to move your challenge questions. So you thought you were able to answer those challenge questions at the end of the presentations. Now let's see if you can answer them now. So some of the things that you can think through the presentation is, if the data is continued to be published, if it's inactivated, how is it reactivated, and is it published online anywhere? We went through the requirements many, many times. I just have it here to remind you that we had the registration requirements always, and we had the registration renewal requirements always. What we did not have was once you submit your drug listing, if there is no update, right? We would have just assumed that the data is good, even if it was submitted in paper back in the 80s, right? So this would increase our inventory by tens of thousands of data, some of which we were not sure if they're still valid or still in commercial distribution, right? So with the revised 2016 publication of Part 207, firms are now required, not only you must submit drug listing updates in June and December, that is in case you have any updates to the data submitted previously. If there are no updates, now you have to certify, as Regie mentioned, that you have to certify those products to be current and there are no changes, right? So it has gone through very similar path with registration now. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk about might overlap with Regie, just because one of the main reasons we inactivate is because of the lack of certification. So bear with me as we go along. So just a quick data reference here. Currently, we have over 234,000 NDCs in our database. 234,000. I just want you to think about the enormity of that number. Of those, 174,000, over 174,000 are believed to be active listings. It means they haven't been discontinued with us. So they have remained active throughout the years, through the beginning of the electronic submission in 2009. So right now, our active listings sums up to a little bit over 174,000. Out of those, 40,000 of them were never certified. Out of that 40,000, the 25,000 were never updated. So this gives you a little graph which shows the relationship between, so if the dark blue one is the whole inventory, out of that 174,000 are considered active, 60,000 NDCs, and we're talking about product NDCs. 60,000 of those are discontinued. If you take out that green graph, which is 174,000 active listings, 40,000 were never certified. Out of that 40,000, 25,000 were never, ever updated. So they were submitted sometime in 2009, 2010, 2011, whatever the submission date was, right? And then they never even updated to report to us if there are any changes. And it might have been like there is no changes, don't get me wrong, but because they were not also certified, we do not know if that's the case. So when we talk about inactivation, if you look at the core of this graph, the one that we're focusing on right now, at least, is the light blue one. These are active drug listings. So firms haven't discontinued it with us, but they failed to certify or update with FDA. So we're talking about some very old listings, at least at this point. So what is inactivation? In case you haven't heard, FDA published a Federal Register notice in August. It was exactly August 14 of 2019. And in it, it said, we will start inactivating the outdated listing data. And in the FRN, it talks about two different groups. So I want you to pay attention. There are two things here. FDA will inactivate drugs that are uncertified. That's one of the big ones. And then if there is an establishment included on that drug listing, which is not duly registered with FDA. So what that means is that if you submit a drug listing, first of all, if the drug listing is not registered, if the manufacturing facilities are not currently registered with FDA, what's going to happen? You get a validation error, your drug listing submission will fail, right? But there are cases when you submit the drug listing, the manufacturing establishment is registered, but for some reason they either go out of business or you change your manufacturing facility or whatever that may be, the establishment is no longer registered with FDA. So we're going to get to it in detail because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about that, but that is the second group of drug listing data that will be inactivated. So as far as timing, the FRN published in August 14, and in it, it says 30 days after publication of the FRN, we're going to start inactivating, right? Well, to be exact, it wasn't exactly 30 days. We started working on it, and we actually submitted the first batch. I believe it was September 24th of 2019, the first set of data, a little over 2,000, to be exact, actually, 2,678 NDCs were inactivated on that date. After that, we go into an annual inactivation period. So starting in 2020, every January, we will be inactivating uncertified drug listings. And every July, we'll be inactivating drug listings that are associated with establishments not duly registered with FDA. So we're going to put these two in two different buckets because we're talking about two different timelines here, and we're going to go into details on each of those two groups. So the January inactivation, so you are all aware with the fantastic presentation that Regie just had that you are required to send listing certification. If you haven't made any changes or updates or you haven't submitted your new drug listing file in the previous calendar year, then you are required to send a certification between October and December 31st. So if you do not do that, if your drug listing was submitted in 2017 and was never, or 2018, and you failed to certify your drug listing in the certification period, January 1st, your drug listing is considered to be uncertified. So in the month of January, we're planning on inactivating those drugs that are no longer certified with FDA. So the January inactivation focuses on uncertified drugs. So let's say a company is not aware of the FRN, or for some reason their renewal is stuck somewhere and it doesn't get certified on time to avoid this gap of certification, right? So what happens if you actually have a product that is in the market and it should be an active listing, gets inactivated? There is a way for you to reactivate your drug listing, and we'll talk about it more extensively in the next slide. But we are aware that there are cases where the firms either did not know, especially in the beginning of this, well, the inactivation, the certification requirement went into effect in 2017, but believe it or not, there are still companies that are not aware of this requirement with all the outreach and training that we try to do. So once they get that email, all of a sudden panic rises, right? And they're like, oh, what are we going to do? There is a way, so we're going to get to it. So for the July inactivation period, the second bucket we're talking about is the listings that are going to be associated with establishments not duly registered with FDA. So again, we have some registration update requirements, right? So you must renew establishment registration every year, again, from October 1st to December 31st. And then if there is, amongst other things, these are not the only changes or update requirements, but amongst other things, if an establishment closes or is sold, then they must actually report it to FDA. It's either going to be, one of those statuses that Dawn was talking about. It's either deregistered or out of business. So you have to submit that change to FDA within 30 days of closing or selling that establishment. And then your drug listing must be updated in June and December at the minimum. We hope that companies choose to submit changes to us, to the drug listing, registration, labeler code request, any of those SPLs, as soon as the change occurs. We recommend that you do that so we have the most updated information in our database. But at the minimum, you are required to send drug listing updates to us, and that includes establishments involved in the manufacturing process of that drug, right? That's at the minimum in June and December. So let's say, and there are many different live examples here that probably is going to bore you if you want to get to each and every one of them. But let's say there is a company, you submit your registration renewal in this period. So the registration will be good until 2020, December of 2020. You certify your drug, so the drug is certified until 2020. All of a sudden, in March, one of the establishments that is involved in the manufacturing process either goes out of business or decides not to sell you the API or doesn't want to do business with you, right? So what's going to happen? If they're going out of business, if for any reason that company is no longer registered with FDA, there are two different things that is going to happen to your product, right? So you have this product listed. You either intend to continue distributing it in the US, and that is by finding another contract manufacturer or changing the manufacturing establishments. So you want to continue distributing that product in the US market. So that's one case. Another one is that the actual establishment that is the manufacturing facility is also the distributor. So once they go out of business, the drug goes out of business. Or if you are the private label distributor or you're doing business with a contract manufacturer and they go out of business, you decide, okay, I'm no longer distributing this product, right? So there are two different scenarios. You either continue distributing that drug, but then you have to go with other manufacturing facilities, right? Because that manufacturer is no longer registered with FDA. Or you're just going to completely discontinue distributing that drug, whether if you are the manufacturer or you're using that site as a contract manufacturer. Does everybody follow so far? Did I lose you? You did? Oh, okay. All right. So let me try one more time. In March, we have a drug listing that is certified until the end of the year. We're talking about 2020 now, right? Our drug is certified until 2020, and all the manufacturing sites are registered until 2020. That is March 2020. All of a sudden, one of these establishments deregisters with FDA because they either go out of business or they're no longer manufacturing drugs. Okay? So you're losing one of your manufacturing sites on your drug listing SPL due to deregistration or going out of business. And let me emphasize here, please, please provide a clear picture of your supply chain in your drug listing, which is very, very crucial. We will see all sorts of different things about people dropping establishments because of validation error issues. We advise you strongly not to do that. If a company does not register with FDA or refuses to register with FDA, you should not be in business with them in the first place, right? So let's say now in March, that company drops its registration. You have two choices. You either continue with commercial distribution or you cease manufacturing and distribution of the drug altogether. Okay? Did I? Okay. So if you are continuing with the distribution, you obviously have to find a new manufacturing facility because that other establishment is no longer in business. So in June, you are required to update your drug listing with the new manufacturing facilities. So the one that is deregistered is going to drop. The one that is taking up the new manufacturing part is going to be added. Okay? If you decide that you are going to discontinue commercial distribution, then in June, again, which is the update time, one of the update requirements is for you to tell us if you're discontinuing a drug. You will update the drug listing file with a completed marketing status, and you include a future marketing end date, which corresponds with the last lot expiration date of the drug. When you do that, your drug that is being discontinued, even in 2 years from that submission, does not require certification, is not going to be inactivated. Because we know you're just keeping that drug listing active until it runs out. You're not planning on introducing it. Well, you can introduce it back, but then it is the same cycle again, right? That the same requirements kick in. So 2 things. You either stay in commercial distribution or you cease commercial distribution. In either way, when July comes, all listing SPLs must be updated to include a clear picture of those manufacturing establishments or discontinued to tell us, okay, my company is out of business, I'm no longer actually manufacturing this, and I don't intend to use another manufacturer to put this drug in commercial distribution. And the marketing end date can be 2, 3 years, whenever that last lot expiration date is, the future date. Okay. All right. We will probably have some more questions, so I will explain this again, but I'm hoping that will answer at least some of the questions so far. So this is a timeline you will have to remember for your drug registration and listing requirements. Maybe you want to just frame it and put it in your office. Every October through December, you must renew your registration and you must certify your drug listing. In January, if your drug listing is uncertified, it will be inactivated by FDA. In June, you will have to update your drug listing and report to us any changes that has occurred to your drug listing, if any, including, but not limited to, obviously, you have to update your establishments and you have to discontinue any drugs that no longer manufactured with a future and marketing date. In July, those NDCs that are associated with unregistered establishment will be inactivated. So the inactivation process started in September of 2019, as I mentioned. Notification letters were emailed to labeler contact information. Another emphasis on keep your labeler contacts, your registrant contacts up to date. Inactivation SPLs are generated by FDA and the data is removed from the NDC directory search page. So if you go to the NDC directory search page and you look for an NDC that has been inactivated, you will hit a no data found. And just to be clear, why do we inactivate data to begin with, right? Because this data is just growing and growing, and we have companies that just sit on it or even go out of business and do not bother to discontinue those products with us as required by law, right? Actually, our first batch of inactivation was 2 companies that we knew went out of business many years ago. They had 2,876 NDCs actively listed with FDA. You think a company that is going out of business all of a sudden decides, oh, I'm going to hire this consultant and I'm going to have them discontinue 1,000 listings for me? You can only wish, right? So these are the big questions, which I cannot answer. So I thought I'd just put it out there so you guys know this got nothing to do with FDA. DailyMed is a great source of information for healthcare providers and a lot of companies. Some of them do not even use or know about NDC directory, but they ask us about DailyMed because they constantly use DailyMed. I use DailyMed every day. What we do is we transmit this data to DailyMed every day, but as far as we know, they do not publish the inactivated NDC, or they do not remove it from DailyMed. Publish meaning publishing it as a file, as an indexing file, if you will. So as of now, nothing has changed for DailyMed. If anything is going to change, or how it's going to change, is a question for DailyMed. But I'm sure we're going to learn more about it in the coming weeks and months. Another big question is the NSD file, right? A lot of companies are concerned about reimbursement. If their drugs are actually erroneously inactivated, they're concerned about reimbursement. So FDA actually submits or generates the NSD file for CMS, which is used by CMS for reimbursement. What we have done, we have talked to CMS extensively in the past few months or even a couple of years about our intention to inactivate those data. We are providing them with additional columns to the NSD file. There are 2 new columns added to the NSD file, the inactivation date and reactivation date. And they are added, those dates are populated a day after the data is inactivated or reactivated. So if we generate the inactivation today, that date will appear as the FDA inactivation date the next business day in the NSD file. And we have some definitions that are provided, I think, also on the NSD file on what the inactivation and reactivation dates mean. So in addition to inactivating data for the purpose of either uncertified listing or outdated drug listing due to an unregistered establishment, we also use this method for compliance cases. So if there are compliance cases, and it can be either registration or listing, so it got nothing to do with, oh, it's just the drug listing thing. No. For the purpose of the FRN, it's only drug listing inactivation. But inactivation of the data can be used for both registration and listing. In the case of registration, it can be a company that refuses inspection because they say, oh, we're not a manufacturer, right? So the inspectors go knock on the door somewhere like in India or China or anywhere else in the world, and they refuse inspection because they say we don't manufacture drugs. And so we politely ask them to please be registered with FDA, because if you're not manufacturing drugs, you shouldn't be registered with FDA. If they refuse to do so, we have this tool to inactivate their registration. So that's a tool available to us. The same thing with drug listing. If for whatever reason you shouldn't be in the business of listing drugs, but you still continue doing so, FDA has the ability to inactivate. So when you go to the search page of the NDC directory, as I mentioned, those inactivated NDCs will not appear. However, in the NDC directory files, you can see on the page here, there is a folder, a zip file that includes both packages and products. So there are two different files. One is for all products and one is for all packages that have been inactivated by FDA. So you can access the data on the NDC directory page where the files are stored. In that NDC excluded file, there are different NDCs which are excluded for different reasons. It can be because they're expired, it can be because there is a compliance case, or it can be because they're inactivated. If you are searching for just inactivated NDC, just make sure you look at the I value. The ones that are marked as I have been inactivated. So you decide, you get a notification, or you just find out that, oh, my product has been inactivated by FDA, my listing data has been inactivated by FDA. What do I do? If you are still in business, if you are commercially distributing that drug, you need to reactivate that drug listing. If your drug listing was inactivated because of an uncertified status, all you have to do is to submit a new drug listing update to tell us, hey, I just forgot, this is my drug listing, and it will automatically generate a reactivation SPL, which then puts your product back into all the databases, okay? And that reactivation date, which is usually 24 hours after your submission, will be published on CMS and SDE file. So if you're on top of it, if this happens, the most that your product will be considered inactivated, if it was a mistake and you catch it on time and you send us the update, the most is 48 hours. So we know it's an inconvenience, but it's a price we all have to pay to make sure we have an accurate and updated database. Because again, we're talking about over 174,000 products, right? So just make sure that you send an upper version. If there are any changes, obviously provide the changes. If there are no changes, just send an upper version of your drug listing, and it will generate the reactivation, and your product gets reactivated. The listing certification, however, the no change certification SPL is not available to products that are not certified. So if your product actually was submitted many years ago, and then it got expired at the end of 2018 or 2017, when we actually put that requirement in place, then you're out of luck for using the certification SPL, this certification period. You will have to instead go to the SBIA and update and send us the new version. And one thing you have to remember for the compliance cases, either registration or listing, if the data was inactivated, the reactivation will only happen, the reactivation SBL will only be generated if we close the compliance case. So if your data was removed for whatever reason or inactivated, first we have to look at the submission and decide if that case should be reactivated. So as of today, we have actually exactly 9,280, 9 of them we're still working on, 9,280 drug listing data has been inactivated by FDA. And I know you guys have many questions, but I have one more question for you. Can you tell me if you go out of business or you discontinue a drug, does inactivation replace your obligation for telling FDA in June or December of every year if your product was discontinued? No. Do not use inactivation. Inactivation is not something that needs to be used or can replace companies' obligation when it comes to discontinuing their drug products. So with that, well, first of all, we have questions. I invite Regie back.
Actually, I'm going to step in for a second.
Okay.
We're going to change up the agenda just a little bit. For those of you online, if you had questions for Regie or Leyla, first of all, let's thank Regie and Leyla for their presentation.